Hello and welcome back to another out-of-spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. If you've watched this channel before, you'll know from the title and thumbnail of this video, it's a little bit different style of video that we're doing today. We're not talking ceramic coatings, polishing vehicles, and cleaning interiors. We're talking about my new 2025 Kia EV6 wind trim. And just 1 month ago, I picked this car up and made a big gamble at the end of 2025 because my last EV6 was coming up on lease and I needed to make a decision if I should wait 6 months and get something different or if I should trade it in early. That's why this is here. We're gonna go through everything I love and hate about my 2025 Kia EV6. Let's get into it. So I want to quickly run you guys through a couple of different specs with the 25 Kia EV6 wind trim. This is the all-wheel drive version, the long-range version, meaning it gets an 84 kilowatt-hour battery pack, 296 miles of EPA-rated range, and it's also reasonably powerful. This is 320 horsepower, 446 foot-pounds of torque, and honestly, this whole thing is quite a compelling package when you consider the cost of it. Now, when I talk about cost, I don't mean MSRP. If you guys haven't been following the electric car space, you guys will know EVs depreciate extremely hard. So one way around that, especially with a lot of Colorado incentives, what we've been doing lately is actually leasing vehicles. Now, I'm not going to give financial advice. This is my own personal experience, and I can tell you I like to swap in and out of cars. So I have leased this car for 24 months and 10,000 miles a year. Now I quickly want to talk about here on my cheat sheet what I'm actually paying on this and what my other car consideration was. So I came from a 2024 Kia EV6, also in a wind trim, all-wheel drive, didn't have quite a few features. We'll go through all of that and more. But I picked this up basically a year and a half ago for $187 a month and $1,500 out of pocket, including taxes and fees. So I thought at the time, this is my daily driver, my dog hauler. I can test and review different detailing products on it. It was kind of a no-brainer, so I don't destroy my Tesla Model 3 performance over there. Now, this new vehicle did bump up a little bit in price. So this is now $314 a month, but I paid $0 out of pocket. So all taxes and fees are included in that payment, yet again, for 2 years. Now, as a part of that deal, I also traded in my last EV6 6 months early. And I quickly want to talk about why I did that. At the end of 2025, the federal tax credit, $7,500, had basically completely gone away for all electric vehicles. That was a huge thing, incentivizing, bringing down the cost for a lot of leases as well as purchasing electric cars. And I thought it was important to see what my options were. So I reached out to my local Fort Collins Kia. We've worked many times with them on our out-of-spec reviews channel, as well as, of course, myself purchasing 3 different Kias. And I basically said, hey, what would it take to trade this car in 6 months early? And they basically wrote me a check for the rest of it, and I rolled everything back into this. So it is slightly more expensive, but again, $0 out of pocket and only bumped my payment up by a little bit. Now, the other vehicle I was considering was a Tesla Model Y, and I was looking at either the rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. I think, knowing me, I would have probably gone all-wheel drive. Now, there was no real way for me to trade in my last EV6. In fact, I would have basically had to pay for 2 cars for 6 months. I didn't think that made a lot of sense. So my original idea was, hey, in June of 2026, when my last EV6 came up on lease, I was going to be searching for a new vehicle, and Tesla Model Y was basically at the top of my list. Now, things have changed. Federal tax credit is gone. State tax credits, especially here in Colorado, are way down. Currently now in Colorado, we only get $750 as a state tax credit, nothing federal. So I want to break down the price of what the current lease is on the current Model Y all-wheel drive is and talk to you a little bit about that. So I do apologize, I've got my little cheat sheet here, but I think it's important that I get these numbers right for you. So I was looking at a Model Y Premium all-wheel drive. Now, that vehicle, you can price and option it a little bit differently based on the exterior color as well as interior color. This is just the base one. So the stealth gray paint on the exterior, black interior as well. For a 24-month lease and 10,000 miles per year, comes out to $801 a month. Again, remember I'm paying $314 for this car and $4,350 down. That includes all of your taxes and fees. We'll get into the price breakdown of the whole lease term as well as year term here in a second. Now, you could also make that cheaper. Kia is really incentivizing doing 2-year, 24-month leases instead of Tesla, where they're traditionally going a 3-year or 36-month lease. For a 36-month lease, that same exact car would be $711 a month with $4,163 out of pocket. Now, that to me sounds like a lot of money, and when you break it down over the total cost of ownership or your lease ownership of that, or by year, it's staggering amount of money. So this EV6 is going to cost me over 2 years, not including insurance. I should also mention the insurance on an EV6 is way cheaper than Tesla. I know that from owning 3 of them. My Model 3 Performance is well over double the monthly payment that this is for insurance. This car will cost me $7,536. That brings down to $37.68 per year. Honestly, for a lease, for what this is, I think that's pretty reasonable. If I were to get a Model Y, a 2-year lease on that, it would equal $23,577 or $11,788 per year. Quite a lot more money for basically a car that I'm doing the exact same thing in. Now, it could have also done a 3-year lease, which would have come out to $29,759 or $99.19 per year. That's a lot of money to just rent a car, turn it back in. So that's why I made my decision. Now, also on top of that, a lot of big changes have just happened in Tesla. Base Teslas, pretty much all the base ones except for the standard models, come with something called autopilot. Basically, it's lane centering on the highway, and you can actually use it around town as well. Kia also has a similar thing built in. Now, as of literally yesterday, Tesla has removed this, so you now only get cruise control, or you have to pay $99 a month for full self-driving. So on top of the cost, if I wanted any sort of ADAS systems to keep me in my lane, I'd have to pay for full self-driving. Now, truth be told, and to be totally fair to Tesla, it's a way better system than what's on this, but that would be an additional $99 a month, $2,400 over a 24-month lease period, or $3,600 over a 36-month lease period. So you can see, I think I made the right decision. Now that we understand what I'm paying for this thing, I know that was long-winded, but I wanted to break all of this down for you guys and show you what is out there instead of just Teslas. I'm a huge Tesla enthusiast, but I also think it's really cool to have something of a little bit different flavor and in ways an actually better car. So now that we understand a little bit about what this car cost me, the pricing and specs of this thing, I think it's important to walk through this and tell you guys what I like about this car. Now again, I'm coming from a 2024 Kia EV6, which was actually built in Korea. This car is currently built, the refresh models, here in the United States. So we'll go through, talk a little bit about the refresh, talk about things that I like, then we'll go into the section of things I'm kind of okay with, but I think could be improved. We're again going to talk about all the changes, and then lastly I'll tell you all the things I very much dislike. Now again, do keep in mind I was really considering getting a Model Y, either long range, rear wheel drive, or an all-wheel drive variant. We'll talk a little bit about that throughout this vehicle, kind of doing a head-to-head comparison with you will. So one new thing I actually love about this car is actually the design. I should also mention I have some different wheels and tires on this thing. These are the last generation Kia EV6 GT wheels, a 21-inch wheel. These are rocking the Nokian Hakkapeliitta R5 electric tires here, and they are freaking incredible in the snow. If you're wondering why I'm not filming outside, it's currently about 11 degrees outside and snowing. So that's why we're inside here today. This also has a summer tire, so I'll be swapping those in and out, but I think they very much make the car look a whole heck of a lot better. Overall design on the new car, I really like. The new integrated front headlights. One thing I also want to mention down here, I had my friend Eric from Drive Protected actually put a couple of pieces of gloss PPF in this area. This whole thing, if you will, was this ivory silver color, and I just thought it looked a little weird. I much preferred how the the old generation was, with kind of this cutout at the bottom. So I had him replicate it. I think it turned out really, really nice. Now, one thing that is different here on the wind trim versus the higher trims is you don't have a full light bar here, which I don't think is the end of the world, but we actually do have completely new headlights. That was one of my biggest complaints with my last EV6, and I am happy to say they have improved the headlights. The last ones were so dim, especially driving in any sort of rain, any sort of snow, sleet, whatever you want to call it. It felt like you literally had the DRLs on. These are actually usable now, and you have some nice projector beams in there instead of just a traditional LED, if you will. So very much like that, really like the front end design. Down the side of the vehicle, this is basically the same looking. There is really no changes, so kind of the body in white essentially has not changed, other than you can see back here, we no longer have our charge port over here. It's actually on the driver's side. We'll talk about that in a second. We also have a fully new rear bumper here, which I think looks a little bit better. I didn't really like all the scallops that I had in my last car. And we also have a actually new taillight, which doesn't look any different until it's actually on. And yeah, I think looks pretty good. One of the things I am really excited about this car though, is I have native NACS in the correct location. Why I say correct location is because this integrates beautifully with Tesla superchargers. Now, this is an 800 volt vehicle architecture underneath, again, 84 kilowatt hour battery pack. The only unfortunate thing with having this plug in it, it doesn't really charge so well on Tesla superchargers. They have to use a booster in this. So this, instead of its peak over 250 kilowatt charging, will only do 125 on a Tesla supercharger. Now, I don't think that's the end of the world, because these cars have a massive mega charging curve, at least for the segment. It's no lucid gravity, it's no stuff coming out of China, but it is very good, holding well over 200 kilowatts past 50%. That car over there struggles to even pull 100 kilowatts at 50%. So I really, really appreciate the charging on this car. The EGMP stuff is just leagues above what Tesla actually has over there. The other cool thing about this NACS Sport is I also have vehicle to load. So there's a little adapter I'll show you later when we go on the front trunk that actually plugs into here. I can plug an outlet into it. And actually, we lost power at my house a couple of months ago, and I was able to use that vehicle to load adapter to keep our refrigerator going. So that's a super nice feature that Tesla doesn't have on all of their vehicles, only on the new Model Y Performance. So very glad to see that here. One other thing I also very much like, other than all the indicators of your charge level in there, is this ivory silver color on the exterior. This is a really interesting color because I think probably a lot of you think it looks beige. The cool thing is when you actually see this out in the sunlight, it is bright silver. And the cool thing is the highlights in here, these areas you can see, have this kind of gold metallic to it. So I really, really like this color. I also really like the color interior that I have here. So I went with this kind of peanut butter toffee brown interior, and I think looks quite a bit nicer than my last one, with kind of a light off-white beige. Now, I did have the option to get a black interior vehicle. This is my dog hauler, so you can see literally back here I have two very fluffy, hairy golden retrievers that are back here, and it just makes it an absolute mess to clean up. And I thought this interior actually worked pretty darn nice. Now, one of the things that I like on this car versus my last car is we finally have pop-out door handles lower down in the trims to the wind trim. We also get 360 cams. I'll show you that later when we talk a little bit more about the software, and they work very, very well. This also has blind spot cameras, so when you're driving down the road, basically turn on your turn signal, it pops up in the center display up there, and it's very easy to see. I much prefer it over how Tesla actually does it, but I will say the Tesla cameras are much improved over this car. Being that this car has 360 cam, we also have a little camera up front here and on the rear, as well as down the sides and up there. Now, one thing I really hate about this car is the dealership actually drilled the license plate bracket, which really frustrated me. But at the end of the day, it wasn't going to break the deal. If it was a car I was keeping long term, say that Tesla Model 3 Performance right there, there is no way I would actually accept delivery. I would either request a new bumper or a brand new vehicle. Moving on to a couple of other things I like is cabin space. And I know that might seem weird with kind of this teardrop shape it has, but this is actually a surprisingly roomy vehicle. Now, one thing I much prefer on this car over a Model Y, just in general, whether it's a performance, a non-performance, is the seating position. These seats do get low enough. In a Model Y, I feel like I'm sitting on the car, not in the car. This feels like I'm actually sitting in the car. A lot of people actually say this car feels a little bit more like a sedan with how sloped the roof is. You definitely don't have a ton of headroom in this, but you do sit nice and low. You can bring the steering wheel out, get in a more comfortable driving position. Now, with something like my Model 3 Performance over here, that's used to how I'm sitting. I want the seat on the ground, I want the steering wheel to come all the way out. Again, I don't want to sit on the car, I want to sit in the car. A couple of interesting improvements with this vehicle as well. I think this car rides actually a little bit better. It's also a little bit more quiet and also quite a bit more efficient than my outgoing EV6. So those are all very good topics. Another thing I think is in kind of the good category would be this thing has huge regen. Now, that brings up another topic of things that I actually really dislike about this car. We'll talk about that later on in the video. But overall, I think this car is plenty fast, has great one-pedal driving, and honestly, I much prefer one-pedal driving in this just because of the amount of regen you have versus this. Now, I do think Tesla's is actually calibrated better when you come lift off the throttle and the car slows down. It's a little bit smoother, a better ramp in there, but this overall, I think, takes the king in terms of the amount of regen. In fact, once I get out of this car, back into this car, I'm always kind of scrambling for the brake pedal because I'm judging my distances off the amount of regen this car has. But that has been really nice. Again, moving on to the interior space, it is actually pretty surprising. It's a little hard to see here with the dog cover, but how much leg room you actually have in this car. It is really impressive. Now, the farther down you lean that seat, if you're extremely tall, you will hit your head back here, which definitely could be a negative. But overall, for this size of vehicle, the space inside, as well as the seating position, I much prefer it over a Model Y, as well as over something like this major competitor, the Hyundai Ioniq 5. Now, we'll fire up the car here. I hope all the beeps and bongs are gonna go away. One thing you will notice with this vehicle, we do have the TPMS light on. For whatever reason, these sensors don't seem to be reading the same as they were on my last vehicle to this vehicle. They must have changed some sort of software, something like that, not exactly sure, or just the overall way that the TPMS sensors go into this car. So that is something I'm considering when I swap over to the Summers. I will need to update that. Now, a couple other things I like in this car is this little icon here, which is called Connected Garage. This actually brings up my queue. And the great thing with this, when I arrive to my house, basically opens up the door. When I leave, automatically closes it. Now, I was a little disappointed in this car. I didn't realize it, but I didn't option the home link mirror, if you will, on it. But this is a great workaround. It also has the same thing in my Tesla, would have the same thing in a Model Y. I think it's a little bit better implemented in the Tesla. This is a $45 per year subscription on here, which I think is actually about the same as the Tesla over there, but that is something that I really like. The other thing that I think I like over the last generation EV6 is the new steering wheel, some of the new materials, new designs, new screens. Now, it's not all perfect. I think this interior overall, and we'll get in here to kind of my okay areas, I think the interior overall feels pretty nice. It's not great, honestly. There's a lot of hard plastics in here, especially when you get down the doors, all of these lower areas. Stuff like this doesn't feel the most premium, but I think in general, the car does feel inviting. It does feel pretty darn nice. The seats are extremely comfortable, and one thing I can tell you from owning a Kia, both the EV9 and a previous gen EV6, is that these materials wear very well for dogs who use these things like an absolute jungle gym. So that I'm a big fan of. They've also changed some areas in here to the satin black material. One thing that I like Kia does is all of these are not piano black. Same here on the steering wheel, same there on the doors. The thing I don't like, this little guy in here for your park, is this piano black. Now that brings up a thing that I like, I dislike. It's kind of in between. Now, I personally prefer the way Tesla used to do it with activating your park reverse, neutral drive, all of that stuff through a stock right here. This, I think, is an okay implementation. My biggest gripe with it, getting into some of my negatives with this car, is you actually have to have your foot on the brake to go from reverse to drive or drive to reverse, which is annoying because when you're backing out of a spot, I don't want to hit my foot on the brake, slow the car down, then twist that. That gets a little annoying. That also brings up the next thing about regen. So I guess we're getting into some of my negatives here as well, and that is the regen paddles. Now, when you start up the car, you can see this right here is in level 3. So it will have pretty decent amount of regen, but it will not actually come to a full stop. So every time you get in this car, you have to turn on the start stop button, which I absolutely hate, put it into drive, then you've got to pull this regen paddle. The annoying thing is when you go out of drive, maybe into reverse and or back, then you don't have full regen. So it goes into level 3. It gets a little awkward. I think they just need to have it stay on the whole time. Now, I know the reason they do this, and that is for its EPA rated range. You see, when you pull this paddle here, it basically runs in all-wheel drive mode continuously. When you are in level 3, it only runs rear-wheel drive mode. Being that when you're driving these electric cars, if you are in full regen mode, it's running both axles, consuming more and more juice. So that is why they do that, and cars have to be EPA tested by their actual key up settings. So that is one thing that's yeah, a little odd. Now, coming back to things that I think I'm so on, and is the new software. So we have CCNC here, and it is a little bit different from my last EV6. This is more like what we have on our EV9. Now, in general, I think this is a pinch point for the Kia and Hyundai and a lot of other manufacturers versus something like Tesla and Rivian, and that is just software in general. The software here has gotten better. There's a lot of great improvements. I think aesthetically it looks better. I personally don't think it's anywhere close to Tesla though, the functionality, the usability of it. So that is one thing to consider if you're somebody who really cares about tech. This car has a lot of tech, but the software integration is not so great. That brings me to the point of the Kia app. The Kia app has been improved. It was actually software updated on my last EV6. It's okay, but again, it's not the functionality of my Tesla. So if you're wanting an experience like this, you're gonna have to stay with Tesla or go to something like Rivian and pay much more of a premium for that experience. So the software has been good. I much prefer it over my last generation. There's lots of great different icons. I've got this all set up. I'm still learning the software a little bit. These are our EV menus. If I come into here, I think it's right here, that is one of my new favorite things that this car has over my last gen, is you can manually precondition your battery pack. Now that's very important for DC fast charging to get peak speeds, especially when it's cold outside like it is right now. Previously, when you would do this in my last vehicle, you would have to actually navigate to a supercharger, well, not really a supercharger, but any of the other chargers, an Electrify America, something like that, Iona, whatever it would actually be. Now, I don't think the nav system here is great. It's gotten better. I want to show you one important thing here. This actually has proper route planning on it now. Now, it's nowhere near as good as Tesla's. It's very unintuitive changing the stations. Tesla does a much better job. I can do it on my phone. I'm saying that as it's having a hard time loading here because we're inside, but it has loaded that up. The interesting thing though, it only does 4 charging stops. So you can see we're arriving at chargers. That's a 250 kilowatt station there. I believe that is, I don't know, to be honest, but going from 10% to 80% in just 19 minutes, pretty damn good. I believe that's the new Iona station just outside of Grand Junction. So I will say this is much improved. This is going to Vegas right now. It's saying 3 hours, 41 minutes with charging. That seems pretty darn decent. I do also use a better route planner in here, which you have an OBD dongle that goes in here, sends live data. I much prefer that. So moving on to other things that I like and kind of dislike, and that that is CarPlay in general. This car, of course, does have CarPlay. I've got it turned off right now, otherwise we couldn't record. It's really annoying for YouTubers to use, but this now has wireless CarPlay. I can have a better route planner up here with my route. I can add stations. It's very, very nice to use. CarPlay has been absolutely flawless on this. It's been very consistent, been very good. I'm not a huge fan of CarPlay over the kind of built-in systems like Tesla, but if that's a big selling point for you to have CarPlay and that's what you like, great. You have it here and you don't actually have it in a Tesla. Now, I think that is one point that on the software with this, I kind of give it a little bit of a pass in this generation because of the usability of CarPlay. Once you get this lots of settings set up, you can actually really just get in the car, use CarPlay as your nav, use a better route planner as your route planning, and you're kind of good to go. You don't have to deal with any of this. Now, again, I do wish they would spend more time, more effort to actually make this quite a bit better. Another couple of things before we get into my dislikes is the new HDA or highway drive assist. Now, Kia does this very differently than Tesla, as I explained beforehand. The new vehicles coming out, so if I was getting a new Model Y in June of 2026, it would not have autopilot. I'd have to pay for FSD. Now, I am not here to say this system is better than FSD. It is absolutely not even close. FSD is leagues and leagues and leagues above. This has basic lane centering. It has lane changes on interstates. It is good. I don't think it's perfect. It struggles sometimes. It does a little ping-ponging here and there. Overall, though, it's a very usable system. When you're bombing down the interstate, you just want to have the car keep you in a lane. You can indicate lane changes, it stays on, and once you get into your next lane, it works. That's really impressive. What I also like about this is it has lane centering without cruise control. What I mean by that is I can be driving down a road in the city, something like that, 40, 45 mile an hour zone. I can hit this single button right here. It'll control the steering and I control the throttle and brakes, or technically regen here. So it's really great. It just steers around for you. Now it gets really confused when you start going around roundabouts. That's when you have to manually take over. But if you're on straight roads and traffic, it's nice just to throw on and I can control the speed, the distance to the car in front of me. So I really, really appreciate that. But it's not to say this system is better in any way than full self-driving, other than when I'm on highway drive assist, I can control my distance, I can control what lane I'm in, and I can also control my exact speed. That's one thing I'm not a big fan of full self-driving, is the way you are basically locked into their speed profiles. A couple of other points of the kind of meh category for me before we move into my very big dislikes with this car. And one of those actually comes back to the headlights. While I think these are a huge improvement over the last generation EV6, if I were to purchase a Model Y, they have full matrix functionality, which is unbelievably nice. My Model 3 Performance has it. The headlights are way better than what I have in this. The last topic I want to mention here, and one topic I was very nervous about before I actually got this vehicle because I didn't realize it, they have scrapped the Meridian sound system on here. So that used to be a 14 speaker stereo in my last EV6. Now, that being said, you can get it in the GT line trims, the higher trims of this vehicle, where it doesn't come down to this actual vehicle. But the big thing here, this goes down to a 6 speaker, and the Meridian sucked on my last car. It was absolutely terrible, had really poor just overall clarity. The bass was all over the place. They actually had the sub wired out of phase, and there was actually a hack. I believe it was EV Jeff. I think that's his name. Sorry if I'm butchering that. But he basically took the wires out of the plug, switched them. I did the same in my car, and it was totally different. Now, this car, getting into this being only 6 speakers, I was very concerned about that. And I gotta say, this is a usable stereo. This is no Tesla level system. There's a lot of better systems out there, but I think this is okay. Now, do I necessarily think for the MSRP of this vehicle it's okay? No, not really. I do think this needs to be quite a bit better, but I will say it's serviceable, and I actually prefer it over the Meridian. Starting off here with one of my biggest dislikes is having no big sunroof in this. Now, I have been in the EV6s with a sunroof that's right here. It opens. That's kind of a nice feature, but it also brings the headliner down quite a bit, which I really don't like. I much prefer how Tesla does it in the Model Y with a huge pane of glass. Gives you more headroom, feels more airy, feels better in general. Now, what also makes this car feel a little bit more claustrophobic claustrophobic, especially in the wind trim versus the GT line, is you don't have any sort of ambient lighting at all at night. So this thing can feel like a real dungeon. Now, the GT line has actually some pretty nice ambient lighting in it. You have it in the doors down here. I believe you have it in this little stretch here across the dash, some in this area. It's actually pretty darn nice. And I think ambient lighting in 2026 needs to come on a vehicle that is, you know, $55,000 like this vehicle. I just don't think it feels like a very premium experience. The other thing that does not feel like a premium experience in an electric car is having a start stop button. I love the way Tesla does it. A lot of other manufacturers, Rivian off the top of my head, Volkswagen, your butt hits the seat, foot on the brake, put it in drive, boom, you're on the road. This to me is just annoying, and I can't tell you how many times I get out of this vehicle, forget that I left the car on, and that's really frustrating. My other huge gripe with this, being a dog owner, this car has no actual dog mode. So what's great about Tesla is you go into the UI here, you select dog mode, close the door, it keeps the air conditioning on, and on the screen up here in bright white with black font on it says, "My dogs are safe, the climate control is set to this." I've had people in the EV6s that on a hot summer day here in Colorado, you know, we'll get 100-degree days. I can leave the climate on in this, we'll talk about that in a second, but I've had people standing next to the car going, "I can't tell that the car is on, I'm concerned about your dogs." And I'm like, well, the air conditioning's on. They're like, well, how would I know that? If the screens would actually say, hey, the dogs are safe, all of that stuff, that would be really nice to have. The other great thing is you can control that via the app, via Tesla's situation, but this is the only way to actually leave your vehicle on. Now, I believe, yes, right here, you go to utility mode, you have to activate utility mode, and then you can't actually leave your car locked. And that brings up an annoying point with the flip out door handles here. So let's say I walk into the grocery store, whatever I'm doing, I have the dogs with me. I can't necessarily actually lock the vehicle, and somebody could just literally walk up, open up the doors, and my dogs are sitting in the back of it. That is a huge mistake on my part. Or not on my part, on Kia's part. The one way you can actually lock the car is pretty cumbersome. So if I get out of here, what you do is you roll down the steering wheel, you roll down the window, then from out here, you press lock, roll the window up, and now the car is locked. And then when you come back to the car, use the key fob here, you unlock the doors, and you get back in. And the weird thing is, the car is quote unquote on, but I have to turn off the car and then turn it back on. It is just a very cumbersome system. Every manufacturer from cars now on need to keep climate or dog mode. Dog mode is the best of the best. Tesla, again, has different modes. For camping mode, you can leave it on with the screens off, or you can have the dog mode on it. I think that's a big mistake by Kia. The other thing here is we've got a new key fob. Overall, I like this design versus the last one. This is the same as we have on our EV9. This does not have the Smart Park, I think they call it, on this car, where you can, you know, roll it in and out of parking spots based on the key fob. Now, importantly for Tesla, you have to pay for FSD to do that, so $99 a month for their summon feature, which is leagues above what this is, but I just wanted to mention that. The thing that's frustrating on this is a $55,000 vehicle in 2026 that doesn't have phone as a key. And I think that is a huge mistake on Kia's part. So I'm constantly carrying this thing around. Now, a base Tesla Model 3, their standard version that is sub $40,000, you have phone as a key, Tesla's great software, Tesla's great app, and it just works way better. So I think that's a big miss from Kia, and something that I'm pretty disappointed with. Now, I should also mention, with phone as a key, you can get it on higher trims like GT line, but at the wind trim, it kind of stops. So there are some features I just wish I had on this, but I didn't want to spend more for a GT line. It's basically the same car, a little bit nicer interior, different body styling, different paint on it, different wheels, stuff like that. I thought this made a lot more sense. It was substantially more money to get a GT line. The incentives were in this car. That brings up another point here. I cannot open up the front trunk directly from the key fob. In fact, you have to come in here and pull the manual release, which I think is kind of a big miss. And what's also a big miss is the overall space of this vehicle in terms of the front trunk. And this you open up, I mean, it looks like kind of a combustion car engine in here with a cover, and you pop this cover open and you have space for kind of almost nothing. Now you could throw a pair of shoes up here. I keep my vehicle to load adapter right in here, which is nice to have, but I will tell you this is not 100% dust proof or waterproof in here. They put this very, very janky kind of seal in here, which does not keep out 100% of water. So if you're rinsing this down, you get some dust, you get some rain in here, stuff can get wet up here. So do consider that. Now I want to show you guys this little vehicle to load adapter because it is actually very nicely implemented, and I think arguably better than Tesla's in some ways, but theirs is better than this. Now, what's really cool about this plugs right into your NAX port. Sorry, filming with one hand trying to do this all is really, really fun. Wow, I wouldn't or shouldn't have put it there, but I did. Okay, I'm gonna have to leave that thing off. But there's your port, so it plugs right into there, and then right through here, this entire thing clips off. Sorry, this is very hard to do one-handed filming, and you just plug it in right there and it works. It is really, really impressive and very much like it. It's just one of those things that is a absolute nice to have. So we'll close this down here and then again, close that down. Not a very premium experience. Another couple of things I want to say back here of interest to you guys on the wind trim. Now I've got a bunch of crap back here that I need to actually deal with, but you've got a good size rear storage area back here, and without the Meridian you can actually use all of the space under here, where I believe the amp, maybe the sub, was actually here. So that is pretty darn good. This is all powered, has great space in it, and yeah, especially when you fold down the seat, it's very, very roomy. Well, before we end off this video, I want to make a few last points here, my 1 month ownership and just my overall feelings of this car. One thing I want to point out with this vehicle, again, this is a USA built vehicle versus the Korean built EV6 I had before. Build quality on the last gen EV6 I thought was exceptionally good. The interior was great, but I did have some rattles. Exterior fit and finish wise, it was amazing. Paint quality was really impressive. And moving to the US built car, I feel like what's interesting here, the interior is quieter. The overall rattles and NVH is way down on this vehicle in a good way. But then you come to the exterior and I feel like the precision that my Korean car had is way, way less. For example, I'm sure you guys can see this on the camera here. This door, this rear door sticks out quite a bit versus the front door here, and this seal looks absolutely huge. Little things like that, little things like the side trim down here having clips that are pushing out and they look like dents in the side, I don't think really mimic what the MSRP asking price of this car is. I will also tell you, I think paint quality is way worse on these cars versus the Korean ones. I found some very weird sanding marks on this, lots of contamination in it. Nowhere near as bad as Tesla's contamination, but I don't think it's technically acceptable for what this car is and what the Korean standard actually is. But I think overall, my 1 month ownership update, I'm really, really pleased with this car, and I think I made the right decision. Now, objectively, you could say a Model Y is a better vehicle, and I would 100% agree with you. I think the interior is a way more improved experience, feels much more premium, feels way nicer inside. The software integration is mind-blowing. I really like having the Tesla overall traction control, things like that, the overall driving characteristics. I do think Model Y has some benefits to it, but there's also a lot of things here that we talked about that I much prefer in the EV6, and I think the biggest one is just when it comes down to price. For me, this is a car that I'm not going out to enjoy. This is my daily driver, my dog hauler. This thing's gonna get beat to shit, literally, and I'm gonna ride this thing hard. So for me, this is just a car I'm traveling to and from work, picking people up at the airport, doing my thing with. I don't think it makes sense to spend double, almost triple the monthly payment for a Tesla that essentially does the same exact thing. But you also do, with that price point, have to live with some of these frustrations. But then again, I still have some frustrations with the Model Y. So I know this was a long-winded video, but I wanted to put it all out on the table. My pros, cons, love, hates, somewhere in betweens with the new 2025 EV6. Explain a little bit about why I got this car. A lot of you were confused, and I am very, very happy I made my decision. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one soon. Bye-bye.